So about a while ago, I made a video talking about Giovanni used to be a flying gym leader, and then they settled on him being a ground type gym leader. Well, we just found more proof why they decided to change it to a ground type. If they decided that Giovanni wasn't going to be a flying type, you see, Giovanni, G-O-G-I-O, means earth. Now, obviously, a lot of people know the geology. So, if you think about it, if you really do take his Japanese name, I forget off the top of my head what it is, how to spell it, but I know how to pronounce it. But it actually means sacred tree in Japanese. So the Japanese version of Giovanni in the final version, they decided to settle on the fact that it looks like a sacred tree rather than the fact that the Earth badge literally was a feather. So while that was a prototype, I also feel like the reason, one of the major reasons why they changed Giovanni being a flying type gym leader is because he was using Pokemon that weren't in the original Pokemon. So it was like, for example, from what I was able to find, and then later on, this is right around the time when like Sabrina would have been the 8th gym leader. The gyms were kind of out of order, technically, but the same gym leaders existed. So what happened was you would actually go to the Silphco, and there was a boss rush later on that wasn't in the final version because, again, cartridge limitations. So Pokemon Gen 1 was supposed to be longer, and that explains why there was a lot of glitches in Gen 1 because it wasn't technically programmed finished. So that explains why it kind of felt like certain things were missing. Had there been more cartridge space, they probably would have had time to put all this, and the game would have had all the extra equipment that it did. As the series went on, however, the stuff that they cut from the original games would later find its way into the games in some way, one or another. So we just had to figure that out. But anyways, some of the stuff was changed, and they never went back and changed it to what it originally should have been. So, like, for example, Giovanni being a flying type gym leader, I also feel like the real reason why Giovanni wasn't a flying type gym leader is because at the same time, though, when he was a flying type gym leader, I mean, you would, like I said, you would fight the gym leaders again later on, and they would use stronger Pokemon. Well, Giovanni was in there, and he would use all 3 legendary birds from Gen 1. Hence, that would also explain why he wanted to capture Mewtwo, because he would have the legendaries then. But at the same time, though, he would try to get his hands on Mewtwo, but Mew was so rare, and there was probably more than one Mew because it was a species of Pokemon. But seeing that they couldn't find another Mew and he still didn't have Mewtwo, but this was right around the time when you could catch like the legendary birds more than once, and legendary Pokemon like Arcanine and Dragonite were legendaries. So that would have made sense because you could catch more than one of them and they were still considered like a legendary. So it's interesting. It really is to think like Pokemon really does have a lot of interesting concepts. And even if the main games don't do this anymore, it's actually very interesting that, or I mean, like don't do like the prototype data that they had. The games were different. We can always go back and make our own version of it somehow. So something to get us thinking. But that would also explain why Giovanni was a gym type, was a gym leader of ground type. And I also think it was because they also wanted to give him a Rhydon, because Rhydon was the very first Pokemon that was ever made. So it was interesting.